And a top story this hour coming in from the US, the Pentagon has approved providing Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles. However, the final decision remains with President Donald Trump. According to a CNN report, the Defense Department has assessed that providing Ukraine with Tomahawks would not affect its own stockpiles. The report, citing US and European officials, even said that the assessment was delivered to the White House earlier this month, shortly before Trump met with Ukrainian President Zelensky in Washington. Now, during the meeting, Trump said that United States needs the Tomahawks and does not want to be giving away things that the country needs to protect itself. Ukraine has requested the missiles to strike energy and infrastructural targets inside Russia.
They're an amazing weapon. They're a very powerful weapon, but they're a very dangerous weapon. And it could mean big, escalation. It could mean a lot of bad things can happen. Tomahawks are a big deal. But one thing I have to say, we want Tomahawks also. We don't want to be giving away things that we need to protect our country.
According to CNN, Trump's position changed after a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who said that Tomahawks could reach Russian cities, including Moscow and even St. Petersburg, and would negatively affect bilateral relations between US and Russia. In fact, the report even added that Trump has not taken the missiles off the table altogether, and that the administration has drawn up plans to provide them to Ukraine at the earliest, should Trump give the order. The Tomahawk system has a range of approximately 1,600 kilometers and is typically launched from ships or submarines. US defense officials even said that several operational issues that include training and the method of deployment are under review. Putin and the Kremlin they've repeatedly warned that the US deliveries of Tomahawk missiles to Kiev could lead to a serious escalation. Also note, earlier Zelensky had said that Ukraine aims to strengthen its long-range strike capability by the end of the year, saying that global sanctions and our pinpoint precision are practically syncing up to end the war on terms fair for Ukraine. He had even said that Ukraine is preparing a series of long-range strikes against priority targets inside Russian territory. The Ukrainian president had even pledged to stop Russian offenses across Ukraine, including assaults in Pokrovsk and even Kupiansk. However, a video showed Ukrainian special forces landing in eastern city of Pokrovsk. Military sources even said that the forces landed in a Black Hawk helicopter a few days ago. Russia's army has been inching towards the city in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. So that's the big story that we are tracking. The Pentagon having approved providing Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles. However, the ball is now in Trump's court as a final decision remains with President Trump. As per a report by CNN, the Defense Department has assessed that providing Ukraine with Tomahawks would not affect its own stockpiles. The report has cited US and European officials, saying that the assessment was delivered to the White House earlier this month. In fact, it goes on to say that it was the report was submitted even before Trump had met President Zelensky in the White House. In this meeting that had transpired between Trump and Zelensky, Trump had categorically said that the US needs the Tomahawks and that the country does not want to be giving away things that it needs to protect itself. Notably, Ukraine has requested the missiles to strike energy and infrastructure targets inside Russian territory. So the final nod that's awaited on part of President Trump. Also important to mention here about the phone call that was exchanged between Trump and President Vladimir Putin, in which the latter had said that Tomahawks could reach Russian cities, including Moscow and even St. Petersburg, adding that if US were to supply those missiles, it could have a negative impact on bilateral ties between US and Russia. And joining us on the broadcast is John Erith. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. He's Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. He was also former member of U.S. delegation to NATO. Appreciate you, Mr. Erith, joining us on the broadcast. Pentagon has given green signal for the supply of Tomahawk missiles. The ball is now in Trump's court. If U.S. were to supply the long-range missiles to Ukraine, where, in your view, would it position Ukraine on the battlefield?
On the battlefield, the Tomahawks are not going to make very much difference. They will be relatively few in number, and the advantage that Russian forces have right now is that they have a great deal more troops and equipment. The Tomahawk is not designed to deal with that. What it's designed to do is it's a precision strike weapon that can take out something like a communications node or a command post or something like that. So it might be that there are some targets of that nature that would be vulnerable to these things, and I'm sure Ukraine will use them carefully to strike such targets if they are available.
Yes. Mr. Erith, in continuation to that very point, how do you think this could impact U.S.-Russia relations, given that the summit is also off the charts, and we also understand that Putin had warned the U.S. that if it were to supply those missiles, it could have a domino impact on the bilateral ties between U.S. and Russia?
The bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Russia is already quite bad. It's difficult to see how it could get much worse. There is no productive dialogue going in things like arms control, which is very important with the expiration of the New START treaty coming in a few months. There is nothing going on in the world of trade or technical cooperation. So it's difficult to imagine how things could get much worse. At this point, it's more or less of an empty threat on Putin's part.
Erith, just last question before we let you go. We understand that the Pentagon has stated in the report that there is enough stockpile of the missiles. So if President Trump were to say no to the supply of those missiles, what in your view you think could possibly restrain President Trump from giving that green nod?
It's a decision that is up to the president. I don't know what he's thinking about this. He has not consulted me, but I would say that he will make a decision based on what he thinks would bring the greatest chance of a early resolution to the war and progress towards a peace agreement. If he thinks that that's more likely by not sending missiles, then he will not send them. If he thinks that it will be more likely with a stronger Ukrainian position on the battlefield, then he may very well decide to send the missiles. So at this point, it is up to the president.
That's right. Mr. Erith, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast.